Okay. So you said Santa Maria, was it California? Or
We live near Santa Maria,
right.
Vandenberg Air Force Base or Space Force Base now is in that almost a little peninsula
Yes.
area. And we've today we're at Big Bear Lake, which is northeast of LA.
Nice. Did you ever
It's a
imagine
man-made lake.
living? What's
What's
that?
that? I said it's a man-made lake, but it's one that they've used in films like some of the old time favorites like The Parent Trap and things.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely remember that one. Did you ever imagine living where you're living?
No, never. Honestly, living in the South
Mhm.
and being in a conservative family, there were a lot of misconceptions about California that I grew up with. And I'm
Yeah.
finding that it's, really a wonderful place with wonderful people and loving it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's been my experience across the board all the way through my life is this constantly unearthing stereotypes that I had and
Yes.
discovering that actually people just all want the same things
Hmm.
and they see it from different perspectives. We don't always agree, but we just all want, to be at peace with our families and just enjoy our lives and do something meaningful. Everybody has very similar missions.
Very
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
because as many times as we've moved, as you know, being very transient yourself, we've
Yeah.
discovered that one place is very much like another, even when they're far from each other.
Hmm. Yeah. So true. Yeah. Where I live is very, very different from where I lived when I grew up too. Because
Mhm.
Alberta is like the Texas of Canada.
Nice.
And now I'm in British Columbia, and British Columbia is like the California of Canada.
Uh-huh.
And they're right next door. Yep. And I
That's so
happen to be
funny.
in a quintessential crunchy town to top it off.
Hmm.
It's lovely to experience it all though. And it actually it's really lovely to recognize within yourself that you can be very receiving of everybody, no matter where they're coming from, as long as they're also, able to really hear you and look past the things that say, oh, you don't believe this or you see it this way. It's possible to look beyond that and create community even.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we discovered that quickly, when my husband first joined the military. I was a preacher's daughter
Yeah.
and conservative family, conservative place I grew up in, and all of a sudden we moved somewhere where there's completely different people. And
Yeah.
that, is very much of a culture shock to me. But I quickly realized like if I can't mesh with anybody, then I'm gonna have a hard time making friends, waiting for that perfect person that mirrors me. Like I don't need a mirror.
She doesn't exist. That's what I've learned.
Yeah.
And she wasn't supposed to exist. We're supposed to be here uniquely for our own reasons.
Oh yeah.
And it's
Good
super
morning.
cliche. Good morning. Super cliche, but I actually feel like everyone, despite so much differentness or uniqueness, they actually add like different flowers in a beautiful bouquet.
Oh
And it
yeah.
makes life interesting. Yeah. Lovely to see you, Angel.
You as well.
Cozied up there. It really, even the door itself makes it look like, ooh, that looks like a nice space that you're hanging out at. So before we begin session two, which I am titling Reimagining Your Homeschool Life. So I don't know if you noticed this, but yesterday, even though we're talking about, all of the things we're talking about in context of the homeschool life, we weren't really talking about homeschooling at all. And today we're going to dig a little deeper into envisioning and clarifying our values for our homeschool so that the activities we do, align with what we believe to be true, so that we feel really more satisfied in what we're doing. We feel like it's good enough and we feel like there's an end goal to it. It's not just activities we're checking off and we can allow ourselves and our kids to be out of the box. So, but before we do that, whether you have your journals with you or not, just consider for a moment what your biggest insight from yesterday was. And the actions you're intending to take in response to that. How you will do it. How you will help to create an accountability structure for that purpose. And I'd love to hear if there was something that you wanted to say that felt like it should have been discussed, but wasn't. And food for thought. You can continue the retreat experience virtually if you are using the retreat course once a week, finding a time to and space to create once a week just to be alone with your thoughts, me on camera or on audio, read the readings, and then dig deep in your journal. So is there anything that yesterday you thought, oh, I wish I had said this, or I wish something else was discussed in a certain area?
Not from what I see, no.
Nope. Great. And I just want to reinforce again, sometimes when we share as openly and authentically and vulnerably as we did yesterday, we experience a vulnerability hangover, in Brene Brown's words. I referred to Brene Brown yesterday. She's a shame researcher. She researches shame and vulnerability. And I gotta think that's gonna be one of the most uncomfortable jobs that you've got in your life. It wouldn't be fun. But she actually discovered with all the research that she didn't have a choice but to be vulnerable and authentic. And she wasn't anywhere near as vulnerable and as authentic as she really knew that she should be. And so she's doing all this research that reinforces that she should be a certain way that she's not. And so she had to end up in therapy and figure that out. And I bring that up because this concept of being authentic is so powerful to how we can be really engaged or really able to go deep into the most important things. And I value your authentic sharing. So I want you to know that. I appreciate that. I know how hard it can be or challenging it can be sometimes. So today we're going to talk about reimagining your homeschool life. And I would love to hear how you would actually like to see how you show up in your homeschool and how you imagine the energy of your homeschool to be.
Well, in my home, it's really, I have very different learners.
Mhm.
And, I used to think that I needed to guide and present every aspect of my child's education with my oldest, but she is a very self-guided learner. And I'd like to find some area in which I can still show up for her in a way that's meaningful for her, but not inhibiting,
Yeah.
because she's almost 13 and she knows her schedule. She goes and she just gets everything done. And I'm always like, knock on the door, crack the door. Hey, do you need anything? You doing your stuff? And she's, of course, always doing exactly what's expected of her,
Mhm.
without me needing to do anything. So I'd like to create something that where I can show up for her in a way that's meaningful for her. And, because it's just so different. And then my middle child is 5, and I have to guide her whole process. She wants to be led by the hand and have connection. It's not that she's resistant to education. She just wants my presence through it all.
Mhm. Yep.
And then my 3-year-old, he mostly learns incidentally. He's
Yeah.
bouncing around, doing his own thing.
Yep.
Sometimes he's joining us, sometimes not. But I'd like to find a way to maybe bring them all together, you know,
Yeah.
once a day at least, maybe.
Yeah.
I just don't know what that looks like yet.
Yeah. Have you explored different philosophies or different methods?
Yes. So, through the years, um, we did Montessori for a little bit, and
Hmm.
then we did Charlotte Mason,
Hmm.
and we did classical conversations, and I was even one of the instructors for that.
Huh.
And then it just felt like it was too much structure for my family.
Yeah.
I like a lot of her philosophy, but too much structure for my family. And so then we went to basically, I used a variety of curriculums and things, and because we lived in an area that had a actual homeschool resource library. So
Hmm.
like anything you needed was there and you could borrow it or keep it. And they got grants for it. So like we were able to
Wow.
do the like big name stuff like the what is it? The creation and then the something in the beautiful and then like Saxon math. We are able to really like appreciate those curriculum for a time because military moves you. And then we became unschoolers, and that's where we really found our jive because then I wasn't dictating to my children. I learned that I didn't have to like put all this feast in front of them. They were searching for it themselves. And so, you know, that's kind of where we vibe still is mostly unschooling.
Yeah.
And then in the summers, I tell people we're road schoolers because then we go to all the national parks and all those experiences. So
Yeah. Your story sounds very similar to mine. I think there's a reason why there's some overlap with us because yeah, I'm like, yeah, yep, 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 check, check, check. And like you said, not putting the feast in front of them. For me, I discovered it wasn't necessary. That was the part where I was like, wow, but I thought I had to do these things because the system has engaged me in a certain way or has taught me what education means. And it means the brick and mortar school, and it means
Mhm.
teachers, and it means lesson plans, and it means learning outcomes, and it means, you know, testing and exams and grades and all that stuff. And it's what we've always known. And then when you
Yeah.
go through all those experiences like you have, all those philosophies, you discover, well, they have their place and they taught you something about learning. And there's certain things that you love about different elements of it, but it's like hardcore effort that isn't even necessary because your kiddo actually does indeed want to learn.
Yeah.
And mostly you're getting in their way instead of giving them something most of the time. Thank you for sharing
Mhm.
that. And I'm not
Yeah.
surprised at all your story was very similar to what mine was.
Well, and I found that co-ops are key because,
Mhm.
at first I was stressing my child out because I was like, you're a year behind in math and we got to keep up. But then I think about how our bodies, the human experience for their bodies and bodily development is so varied. Why should the brain not be the same? And why was I putting
Mhm.
those false beliefs on my child and caused so much stress for us? But with but with co-op, you see families where, the 5-year-old is a reader and then the 8-year-old is struggling, but it's within the same family, and you realize that
Yeah.
you know, this is the human experience. This isn't just my family. My child's not struggling. She's just not there for herself.
Yes. That, yes.
My husband left to go to the grocery store, so
Yes. You want to let them out? 1 second.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
curious about your story.
um I'm pretty new to this.
Yes, I have.
So
Uh, What's your
um
experience with education in general? How has it served you?
um so I grew up um very impoverished.
Mhm.
I we moved around a lot. My mom was a teen mom,
Yeah.
and I moved around so much that I had to repeat the second grade.
Yeah.
And I was illiterate and just very behind because of the lack of stability. And then my mom met someone and he came from a stable background. He had his
Yeah.
whole life together. He was also much older than she was.
Mhm.
Um, and he started out as her friend. He saw us homeless, like we got evicted, and he worked for waste management, and he saw us, and he was like, "Well, you guys can stay with me until you get on your feet," and then that developed into a relationship.
Yeah.
And he bought a home, and I went to the school around the corner from there, and that changed my life
Yeah.
because I had stability, number one, and number two, I had it was like a completely different environment. And so after that, I had great teachers who kind of like connected with me and helped me learn. And
Yeah.
after that, like I just excelled academically,
Mm.
reading, writing, all those things. The issue that developed after that was that once my mom saw that I did well in school, her expectation was perfection from that point on.
Mm.
And so, I mean, prior to that, I remember like my earliest memories with learning and her was how mean she was to me because I couldn't figure something out.
Yeah.
And then when I got to, good school and we had stability, I was able to learn, because you can't learn when you're stressed out.
Nope.
And so after that, like then came the trauma of perfection or nothing else.
Right.
And so that was traumatic for me because I remember I was in middle school. I went to a magnet school. Like that's how smart I was. And I had 7 classes. I got 6 A's and I got 1 B. And she blew her top because I got 1 B. Well, why do you have all these A's and you have this 1 B?
Mm.
And then I had a science class that was very difficult for me because I was having trouble like memorizing all of the concepts. And so I got 6 A's and 1 C. And I remember when she gave me because it wasn't your actual report card, it was like your progress report mid-year
Yeah.
before the actual like report card. And I had an entire panic attack meltdown and I was crying, 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 crying. And my teacher, she pulled me out of classroom and she was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "If you send me home with this C, I am going to be in so much trouble." And she was like, "Well, um, this is just a progress report." I was like, "No, you don't understand." Because I knew enough to tell her a little bit without telling her enough to get my mom in trouble
Right.
about the abuse. And she once I slowed down, I told her, like, "No, you do not understand." She knew exactly what I was trying to convey. And she was like, "Here's what I'm gonna do." She was like, "I'm going to write a B." But she was like, "But when you come back from the break, you are gonna work hard." She was like, you're gonna come in early and you're gonna stay after class. When I talk to your teacher that you have before and after me. And she was like, we're gonna help you earn this B.
Hmm.
And she was like, "I'm gonna help you out." And I said, "Can you print me a new one? Because my mom is gonna think that I wrote this myself." She was
Yeah.
like, "No, I'm gonna put my phone number down. You tell her I changed the grade. It was a mistake, and
Hmm.
then call me." Sure enough, when she came home from work and I gave her my progress report card, she was like, you think I'm stupid? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm like pleading with her, just call her, just call her, just call her. So she calls her and she confirms what I said, like there was a mistake. And from that point on, it was just like all of my teachers were like looped in on what I was dealing with at home. And they just made sure to like take care of me
So
and
then
help
you
me.
really got an experience of the education system, a really
Yeah,
positive,
yeah,
stable, kind of secure. People care about you. They see
yeah,
you. They want your best. I could
yeah,
go into a deep dive, probably as a total guess on your mom's part, that she probably saw this. Oh, wow, my daughter's capable to this. So then I want to make sure she's capable to this because I want her to
yeah,
get out of whatever your scenario is. Totally
yeah,
throwing it out there. But so you actually had a really favorable experience in the education system that helped you raise up and feel more secure.
Yeah.
Even for both of your stories, I would ask you your experience of what your education was in whatever context, whether it was moving around to many schools, or if it was a public school or Catholic school or Christian school or whatever. What are the lessons that you learned about education? And what are the lessons you're learning about education and how they relate to what you're doing in your home? Do you have a journal or something to write in right now? Or should I write it down as a little bit of homework for you later, or something to journal
We
later?
put it in our phones.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah. I'm old school. So I'll reiterate, like, your understanding of what your education was and the benefits or disadvantages of your education. How are you choosing to engage your kids because of those stories or because of those experiences? We each have these many different stories from our childhood story affecting how we're engaging all of our relationships. But today I want to talk about a few different themes or things that are pretty common, especially for home educating families, concepts that people will share with us. Like, sometimes somebody will ask you, but what about gaps? If they're homeschooled, maybe there'll be gaps, or your child will fall behind in case they want to return to school someday. Or you don't know if you should include typical school subjects and or how you're going to do that, because some of them you might not have accomplished or engaged very well. You might wonder if you should create a school 8 to 3 routine, or you see that your kids are learning in unconventional ways, like games or in conversation or just playing. And is it okay that that is considered learning or education? Is that okay to be part of an education? You might see that each of your kids learns differently, which we all do if we spend enough time with them, that they have different interests and they engage all of the things that you offer to them differently. Maybe you loved education when you were young and you loved a certain subject, but your kids really don't. And you don't know how to engage that, or you don't understand how to engage the way they're learning because they're learning differently. Maybe somebody's asked you if you need teacher certification, and you wonder too if you should have that to homeschool. Or you might wonder if there is a right thing to learn at a certain time, or if there are those right things that should be learned at a certain age. I've been there too, and I've had many questions over the years, and I've heard many other people's questions or the doubts that people put in front of you. So if you don't have doubts, somebody around you does. And some of them are just not useful, obviously, but oftentimes those people do indeed care. They're concerned about our kids, and in the back of their minds, they're like, oh dear, she's doing this. I don't know about that. And really, they're just concerned or worried. And not everybody, though. I know that some people are just like not minding their own business and just always got to be in everybody else's. Like, I walked into the grocery store one day with my 4 kids, and a man walked by us, didn't even like register what he looked like. He just said, kids should be in school. And I'm like, okay, like, I have no idea who you are. And he just walked on by. He didn't expect a response from me. He just had to make sure to let me know. And I've had family members, and I've had past school teachers, and I'm sure you have a lot of people that have said a lot of things to you over the time. I've learned that those challenges that we have are doubts that are fueled by other people's doubts. Oftentimes that is an internal boundary thing, that we aren't comfortable just doing our thing on our own terms. Sorry, I'll just wait because I know she's really loud. We're looking for other people's validation of our choices, and we want it, or else we feel incapacitated to choose our own path. And homeschooling, even though it's wildly accepted now compared to when I started, it is still an unconventional path. And it still freaks people out sometimes that we're doing something unconventional. But we can get really clear on why we're doing what we're doing. And when we get really clear on why we're doing what we're doing, and we grow those internal boundaries that we are doing this for our own specific reasons, we'll not only become stronger people, but we won't actually hear people's voices. I'm curious if you've had these experiences where people are questioning you, or you're questioning you, because I'll tell you, I have asked those questions. There's a reason I didn't want to homeschool, and I picked up the book on a lark to get my arguments against it, because I just thought, I'm not that kind of person. I don't wear jean jumpers. I'm a mainstream kind of person. You know, that's what my perception of it was then. Turns out jean jumpers aren't really a thing anymore, I think. But have you had those experiences? Maybe they are in some circles, they're just not in mine. Have you had those experiences where people are questioning what you're doing?
Oh yeah. In my family, I'm the first to lead the way in it. And especially, my mother, she didn't graduate from high school because she got pregnant, and back then you just couldn't go to school at the same time.
Yeah.
And so, for her, it was like, how dare you take your children out of the education system? Like, this is a huge mistake. Like, they're definitely going to miss out, because she felt she missed out. And so even though I threw my kiddo into all the activities, she would constantly critique, her not being around other children, but at the same time critique how much I had her doing outside the home. It's like, well, which one is it?
Yeah.
Am I supposed to give her all these activities or not?
Yeah.
Because that's often how we supplement, get them out of the house, is here, you're in a sport, or you're in this art or something.
Mhm.
So yeah. And of course, I've been there for sure, where I've taken my child to the grocery store in the middle of the day, and someone go, "Oh, you're having a nice break from school, are you?" And my daughter will say, "Well, I'm homeschooled. I don't get a break." Yeah, she truly thinks that every
That's
single
true.
opportunity is an educational opportunity, because even at the store, she's sitting there like budgeting and doing stuff.
Mhm.
So she just replied, "Well, I'm homeschooled. I don't get breaks." It really confused the stranger.
Yes. Yeah. You got her on an academic schedule constantly, but that's not what she means.
No.
No. Yeah. The S question, the one about socialization, I have had many people ask me or comment on how kind my kids are. They're looking out for each other. They're so engaged. And then they'll literally turn and go, but what about socialization? And I'm like,
Like, do you realize that socialization? But okay.
Yeah. Did you hear what you just said? So
Yeah.
same thing with you, Ray. Your
Yeah.
mother is concerned about her socialization or her
Oh, yeah.
social opportunities. Yeah.
Well, and
Meanwhile,
I
she's
didn't
busy.
know how to talk to people that weren't my own age. So then, I get out into the job force, and there's people that are older than me, and I
Yeah.
view them as senior to me, while they're looking at me like, why are you treating me this way? So I
Yeah.
feel like, that getting your children into intergenerational situations is more important than
Beautiful.
just getting them out there with children.
Yeah. Well, one of the books on my homeschool mama reading list is such a useful book for every mom, every parent, is Gordon Neufeld's Hold On to Your Kids. It's about attachment, not attachment parenting in the way that it generally is being shared in the culture, but that when you are attached and connected to your child, they're less likely to go into peer-based groups and derive their sense of connection and meaning in those age groups. And the irony is that, you know, we're told all the time our kids need to be with similar aged peers, but if they become so attached to those peers and not attached to us, they're actually not in the healthiest space for the rest of their lives. When they are connected to us, then they feel free to go and explore and do things beyond our homes in a very, like, a genuinely authentic, independent way, versus kids, you know, that's where gangs come from, is that kids that aren't attached are attaching. They're just not attaching to their adults, they're attaching to the people that are right there. And we all need it. We're guaranteed to go into whatever scenario, you know, a group, because we need to have those nurturing, you know, energies, or whatever, the things that we need, the needs met somehow, some way, whether that's in peers that are not, you know, maybe doing things that are healthy, maybe not, or we're going to attach to an adult. And actually, interestingly, Angel, you got a really lovely opportunity to connect in with adults in the school, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, because I didn't have that outside of I still call him my dad, but outside of him, like he was my only safe space at home.
Yeah.
But I was getting bullied at school and at home, so it was school was an outlet for me, books were an outlet for me,
Yeah.
writing were those are my outlets. And so I recognized early on in this homeschooling journey that my son, my oldest son, he had a different experience at school than I did.
Mhm.
Because I recognize like the education system is completely different from when I was in school compared to him. It's a lot more convoluted
Mm.
and it doesn't serve the child, it serves the system. And
Mhm.
um you do have certain people who are there to help you. Like once we found a place for him, because we put him in a readiness preschool to get him ready for kindergarten. And then I put him in a Catholic private school. Again, I didn't know anything. And that was the
Mhm.
worst thing I had ever done to him, because that system was very problematic. And it was like the catalyst for the problems we had with him, with and also it damaged our connection with him,
Right.
because we trusted the educators, we trusted the headmaster of the school, and that was the wrong thing to do. We
Yeah.
knew they caused us to question who our son was, and
Mm.
then that damaged the relationship and the trust we had with one another. And then once I realized, I had a heart to heart with the teacher, and she candidly told me that nothing was wrong with him. He wasn't misbehaving. It was just the school and the way they wanted things done was he was being labeled as bad, instead of saying, hey, he's showing markers for ADHD. You know,
Mhm. Yeah.
he needs these things. It was put him on a behavior chart,
Mm.
and and that was the downfall of
Yeah.
everything. And then we took him out of that school, and I put him in the public school because he needed speech therapy and other therapies.
Mhm.
And then the principal, she had a doctorate in like behavioral issues and ADHD.
Hmm. Handy.
Both of them are screaming. Just been upset.
All right, we're okay.
Yeah. Hey,
Yeah.
so sweet. Hi, I'm Teresa.
Can you say hi, James?
Oh,
Do you know what? I'm
okay.
married to a James. Is that not a
Ah,
weird coincidence? Yeah, lovely name.
we
Is what
still
we do.
upset.
Totally cool. Hey. Oh my
There's
goodness, the
Ava.
cuteness is overwhelming right now.
We have children that are all three of the same age.
You want some?
Really? Well, that's wild.
Careful.
Here's this.
It doesn't taste good. Oh.
You do what you want to do.
But yeah, so I recognized that there was a complete difference, and like we did have, seeds along the way that were helpful. But I realized that his experience in the current public school system was not gonna serve him. And then when we came to California and recognized the way the school system operates here,
Yeah.
and the freedoms we did not have, we had no choice but to homeschool. And so
Yeah.
we've been trying to find a way ever since. But through this conversation, I realized that one of the things that I should be doing that I didn't realize I should be doing is taking my experience, like the good from my experience in school, and applying that same of understanding and passion to the way I homeschool my kids, because
Yeah.
if it wasn't for people seeing me
Mhm.
and recognizing that I needed help, I wouldn't be here today,
Yeah.
and I'm grateful for that. So that's one of
Yeah,
the
me too. I am too. I know both of your ladies' story or you ladies' stories are just like so fascinating to me. All I'm like, write a book, ladies. That's because I'm a writer, so I assume we need to write books. I love it. Answering the question, what is an education anyways? I think it really does have relevance, because if the root of that word means to raise up, what are we raising up? And you are raising up your specific 3 kids. And even if each of your kids are born in the same years, they're not the same. And every single one of our kids, so different. And so we don't get a playbook for it. I know there's a lot of playbooks out there, but none of them are the playbooks for our kids. In fact, you don't have a playbook even for your child. And they don't even fully have a playbook for themselves, because they're learning who they are. And it's kind of like a book that just keeps getting written. A blank page, getting written on the blank page is their lives and why they're here. So you get to help encourage that raising up, the raising up of them. The education should serve them. The long-term goal for all the different, aspects of it should be serving those kids. Should I speak up louder?
chair over there. Where's her iPad so she can see you up?
You're fine. I can hear you.
You can, okay. The 2 things that I share in the retreat course that go into a deeper dive, if you want to do the homework, is to decide what your values are.
Look at the mountains up there.
Trying to get them occupied so we can.
Yeah. I'm not sure when I should or shouldn't talk. Deciding what your values are, both for your family, but also like
No.
for yourself and for your family, and then deciding
Just
those
sit.
values
Sit.
actually align with how you're home educating. And continue to go back to that. I've been having conversation with one mom who said, I value freedom, I value independence and resilience. And so we're looking at the tangible activities that she's experiencing with her kids each day and saying, does that align with those things? And of course, our values can change also over the course of time. But the thing, when you align your values with the practical doing in the day of your activities, you actually get much more confident and less uncertain. So when people are asking you those goofy questions about your homeschool or making comments, you're like, yeah, okay, they're concerned. I'm good. And also, I have a discussion in that retreat course about creating your vision. So really looking at what's the feeling that you want to be experiencing in your regular days. And of course, you and I both know there's more to you experiencing positive or unpleasant feelings in your homeschool days. There's more to your homeschool life than just you deciding how you want to feel. There's all sorts of relationships that are influencing how you're showing up, and also how you've decided to believe about all the relationships or believe why you're here on the planet. All of those concepts influence how you feel in any given day. But we can decide, at least on paper, and have a benchmark for this is how I'm going to engage my homeschool. So if you want to do a deep dive on values and vision, that's in the retreat course. So I'm curious what you would say your approach is what you believe to be the ingredients for a great education. When I did a deep dive in it, I was like, okay, like deep dive as in a couple decades. I realized, okay, you gotta have a specific child. There has to be a base of this is the person that is receiving this raising up, this education. You need an engaged adult. And whether that was a teacher in a school, or that's your own parent, or it's you in your home, an engaged adult who's listening to that specific child and observing that child in how they learn, their natural aptitudes, how they like to play. And then you, like you said, Ray, you provide like a feast of opportunities. And that does not have to mean expensive. It doesn't have to mean a lot of money in a curriculum. I'm not meaning spend money. It could, but it doesn't have to, because they also like going in the backyard and building fake birds' nests. And there is some element of that's learning too. And sometimes they like being on Minecraft, and that's learning too. So, but it is finding learning opportunities for that specific kid.
Yeah.
All of the kids, they don't learn the same way. They don't want to learn the same way that I want to learn, which is a tricky one to discover inside of you, that you actually are engaging learning in a way that serves you. And then you're like, hey, my child, here's how you shall learn, because I will teach you the way that I learn. And then you discover, and I don't know if this is your experience, Ray, but your youngest is, or your second, I think you said second, is like she wants to engage with you and do
Yeah.
social things. And she's capable to learn independently, but she likes being with you. And
Yeah.
is that how you like to learn?
I've never gotten a chance to learn that way.
Yeah.
But I think as a child that's very much how I would have thrived. I didn't have safe adults at home or at school. And I feel like if I did, then yes, that's exactly how I would have been as a child.
Then you get to give her that opportunity. And
Yeah, she's very much like me. So even though
Mhm.
she's absolutely her own person,
Yeah.
it's very healing to my inner child to just
Yeah.
be with her, to discover with her.
Love that. That's so beautiful. It really is.
What happened today?
I think for me, even when I'm, I get very meta when I'm talking about what an education is, but we can go really specific and say, okay, what's the goal, the end goal for, say, all the school subjects in a school? And the ultimate intent is good. They want us to be able to read, and reading is powerful. Like, I'm going to go with, totally guessing here, Angel, but when you learn to read, now the world was your oyster. Like, okay, what do I want to learn? And that ability, when we see that with our kids, when they're able to read, we're like, okay, we can take a breather. We don't have to sit down and tell them, these are the things you need to listen to, or these are the things you have to do, because all of a sudden you're discovering they're learning all sorts of things outside of your impact. We also want them to communicate. So whether that's verbally or be able to write so that people understand them or convey concepts, we want that. We want them to be able to go into a grocery store and buy something and not get ripped off because the cashier kept back $2. Or, we want them to know how to tip.
I'm too cold.
or, you know, we want them to be gainfully employed, or sometimes we want them to be capable of being independent learners if they decide to do post-secondary.
Yeah.
And so just really detailing what's the purpose of it helps us to break down the, how do I actually put activities or resources or things in my actual homeschool day? Do you have any thoughts or any questions?
Realized that my current state of being that I wasn't able to give, like a lot of brain power to trying to teach them how to read. I don't even know how I learned how to read. I don't even remember, like a lot of my memories are fractured because of so like really I don't have it. And so I my husband and I made the decision to outsource
Yeah.
those things because he doesn't even remember how to read. And we do have we go out to reading curriculums and stuff like that, but it's overwhelming because I'm like, okay, I don't even you get some curriculum and it'll tell you the letter sounds are this way, and then you get another one that's like this way.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, so what do you do with this?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
with my family's experience, Eve learned how to read at 2.5. I don't know how she did it.
Yeah.
But then she went into public education in kindergarten. They tried to teach her to read phonetically.
Yeah.
And her reading,
Went down.
it bottomed out, and suddenly she didn't understand the way she once understood.
Yeah.
Because she's more of a natural learner.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's different for every kid, but it can be, even with my own 5-year-old, it's very intimidating to me because I'm like, I'm not sure what your style is.
Yeah.
But she knows her letters, and every once in a while she'll surprise me because she knows a lot more than she does and just
Yeah.
picks it up naturally.
Yeah. That's the same
Yeah.
thing with
I've
because
had
our kids are
same.
right there. And he's 6 now, but he's the same way. It's just like, oh, you know that?
Right. Like she wrote me a letter and it said mom on it. I was like, I didn't teach you how to spell mom.
I know, especially the younger kids. They're amazing. Like you're like, wait, what? Oh yeah, right. You should be reading now. I don't believe, by the way, there's an age you should be reading. I do think that we can do certain things that really encourage literacy, like reading to them. A weird thing happens in the brain. It has the capacity to understand things more simply because we're being read to. And when moms say, but it's hard for me to read, then I say, well, then get an Audible or get an audio book opportunity in some form to listen to stories together. And so you could be drawing or writing or doing your own thing, or maybe writing is a bit much, but drawing or knitting or something with your fingers or playing Legos with the kids while you're listening, and just having a really literacy rich home. That right there sets you up for natural progression into writing or reading. And I actually think all those phonics programs, I'm with you. Some of those are just like, it just helps you understand how complicated English can be. It is challenging sometimes, and you realize, wait, I can read, but I have no idea why certain words are pronounced a certain way. Like as a full-grown adult, I was looking at the word indict, which looks like indict, but is pronounced indict. And I'm a full-grown adult at that point going, what? That's not right. And yeah, that's English. And yet, as full-grown adults, we contextualize, we know that, okay, indict is, I don't know, it was in obviously some court case context. And so then I'm looking at that and going, okay, well, it must mean this. And that's exactly how kids learn too, context. And some of them learn because we sat them down and we gave them the phonics program. And some of them my youngest was 3 as well. And she just started whole word reading, and she's my 3rd. So I was like, wait, we don't do it that way. And then I realized she already did it.
Yeah, interfering with my kid made it worse.
Yeah.
When my oldest did that.
Yeah.
Do you know my child that did the was 6 or 7? No, he was 6 when he learned to read. And I thought, oh, wow, it's late, which is not late at all. But my others were younger. He's the one that reads the most advanced stuff at the same age than the other kids. So there's no, the school says there's a stage. The school says at grade 1, we need to have this and have this done by the end of the year. By grade 2, you need to do this. This is totally made up. And like, it is actually made up. And I'm not just saying that. It is somebody decides somewhere that generally the average child is this. Except there is no average child. There is no average child. There
Well,
is,
even average leaves half the kids out because average is only half.
yeah. So you're looking at your kiddo, and then you're trying to engage that with your child. I do think it's valuable to teach your kids to read, but it doesn't mean that you have to sit down to teach them to read. It means that you're reading. You're reading with them, and when they stop and they say, Mom, how do you sound that out? Because some kids do that. Then you sit down, pay attention, and go, yeah, let me help you. Or you want to write your name? Oh, cool, let's write your name. Or do you want, like, come up with writing ideas? Do you want to write a letter to grandma or a postcard? Those are all learning opportunities in the writing sphere. And just like you had said, Angel, and I know we all three know this, put a kid under stress. You have to learn now. It ain't happening. In fact, you might be messing with every learning opportunity after the fact.
Yeah. And that was the mistake we made. I mean, because again, we were under
You too.
pressure of the school, and they know best, and they are, and then now we know, okay, that was wrong, and now we are having to like work through the anxiety he has from, with learning, and he's very, very bright.
Yeah.
But it causes him to forget in the moment, and he's like, well, I don't know this, and I'm like, well, I know you know this. But then I had to remember, okay, this is a trauma response.
Yeah.
He's so stressed. He has such a negative association with learning from you guys because of the mistakes, and we didn't want to do that with the other kids. And so I was like, let's just outsource it. That way we can be present for the things that won't stress him out, so that he's already, because he can read, and he can do math, but we want to be able to spend the time teaching things that serves him, and doesn't further damage or stress the connection we have. And then we also have 3 very individual kids, and like, it's a lot. And so I'm like really grateful for the co-op we have, and they get to go and do things and be around other kids and who are schooled, and it gives me the ability to see outside of my limitations, and that's just some of the things that I wrote down. Like, okay, I know what my limitations are. Okay, so but what are my strengths? What can I do? Especially because this is a journey that I have no choice but to be on, so now it's time for me to stop, like, because I'm very stubborn. It's like, stop resisting it, and I'll go with the flow of what it is.
Yeah. And this quote keeps coming up in my mind related to, you said this twice, but it's a Maya Angelou quote that, and I'm going to misquote it, but you do the thing you know to do, and then when you figure out the thing that might have been better, then you do the thing that would be better. Totally butchered that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's where that phrase "know better, do better" really came from, was Maya.
Yes, it was Maya Angelou, the absolute favorite person that I would love to have tea with. That would be amazing. She has so many amazing quotes. The thing is, people put a sense of uncertainty into us when we're approaching our home education, because everyone else is doing this brick and mortar thing down the road. And so then you're taking on this giant independent role of, I want to create something for my kids. And even the most concerned, loving teacher is not as engaged as you are. If you're taking on this role as a homeschool mom, it means you care and you're watching and you want to do the best by them. you're more invested than anyone, no matter how lovely someone is out there. You know your kids better than anyone. You have their best interests in mind above anyone else. And there's no one that cares more to help your kids than you. So then we have to ask ourselves, who are our kids? What are they about? What are their aptitudes, their curiosities? How do they relate to their friends or to their siblings? You can see this early on, by the way. The conflicts that your kids have, it'll happen later too. Yay. But their general approaches to things, that's them. You look at what they're good at. It's too easy to look at what they're not good at, but look at what they're good at. Check to see what they're challenged by. That's who you're going to help educate or raise up. And so what do we ask ourselves, what do we value in an education? How do you come alongside each of them to watch them, to observe them, and to encourage their curiosities, give them stuff that you care about, that you think might be important? How do you tangibly do that? How do you tangibly do that? When in a world where people are like, yeah, but I really think you should choose this curriculum because this is a really cool curriculum, or this is the latest and greatest homeschool philosophy, you should do this, or just put them back in school because clearly all of it's not good enough and you should just give them over to the state. So what are your thoughts? How can you actually create an education that serves your kids and also serves your sensibilities about what an education is?
Well, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about when you say give them back, especially because, being chronically ill and things, there's some mornings where I cannot function or, I realize I can't give my kids back because simply the act of waking up way early in the morning and getting that kid on a bus before 7 a.m., that was not going to happen for me either.
Yeah.
I could not reliably do that. And so,
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I'm
that
in the
right
same
there
boat.
is tricky, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Yeah. But then
And I
how,
realized I value freedom too.
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna give that up. Sorry.
freedom to, go and see your loved ones or go have an adventure, whenever suits your family or your spouse's job.
yeah,
The freedom to explore subjects. I have neurodivergent children also. My oldest, she has dyspraxia, so
uh-huh.
it flips things, and she also has dyslexia. My middle child has dyslexia, and their
Yeah.
form of dyslexia makes things move. So like the first time I learned that my middle child had dyslexia, for example, she's like, "Mommy, my sprinkles are moving on my wall at 3 a.m." And she has these decals on her wall, and she said they were moving. They were dancing.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, so I realized that she needs tools to support math, and you know because if she writes down her numbers and calculates it herself, her nines and sixes are always going to be mixed up, all kinds of stuff. So yeah, valuing the ability to give my children the tools that they need, um and not following those arbitrary rules, like we live in a day and age where they will absolutely have a calculator wherever they go, and
Yeah.
supporting all our family's needs.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. I almost want to pull out the word balance, except I don't like the word balance because it suggests that you can actually balance, but trying to include your needs and really honor the fact that, okay, I'm actually dealing with some big time stuff here, and I don't always have the emotional capacity to do the ideal of what I would love to see. I would love it for it to be like that. And I can't always do that. And so honoring who you really are and what you really need at the same time of giving them the fullness of what you can offer, trying to find a way to, I don't know, does this like go back and forth to
You
honor
gotta be
both of those
flexible.
things? Yeah.
Yeah.
Internally flexible, even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just like, okay, so today's not that day.
Yeah.
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 I routinely have a conversation with people. This one absolutely should be a discussion point everywhere in the homeschool world, but it isn't, because we like to pretend it doesn't exist because it's not pretty. And it is PMS. Girlfriends, we need a PD day for those PMS days. Like, just take off the date, because somehow, some way, it has to change how we do things around the week before, or whatever. And I know everyone has different experiences with that, but it's fairly common to have some real big emotional shifts and just loss of energy. And I think it probably applies to exactly what you're saying too, Ray, that we have to sometimes honor our reality. I cannot show up in teaching my child arithmetic on this day, because I will be like, let's go. We got to do this. We got to do it
Push
right,
it.
and be
Push.
unrealistic, or maybe that's just me. But we need to honor what's reality for us and our kids.
Yeah. Well, and I think, unfortunately, when I don't model that, I'm not showing my kids that they can show up for themselves, or they can honor themselves,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah, so true. And
Yes.
yeah.
Because I want my kids to say, I'm not feeling well, and I'm going to give my body what it needs.
Yeah. And not ignore it so that it gets worse, actually. Yeah. Yeah. The most important things that we actually teach are not actually taught, sadly. They really don't come in a curriculum. So the things that, that are true, if you're honoring yourself and you're saying, actually, I really don't feel good today, so we're going to need to watch documentaries, or here's your screen, have fun, or, we're going to have to cancel a few things, or whatever it is. It's tricky to do that, though. I don't know about you, but there's something internally that says, hell no, I ain't doing that. I'm going to stick to the thing. And I'm going to be even more stick to itness than I would in other ways.
Well, luckily, the co-op that we're currently in, because we don't always have that support depending on where we are, but the co-op that we're currently in, if I'm having a bad day, I can text a mom and be like, can you get my oldest so that she can go on this hike, or she can go on this class? We're fairly supportive of each other in that way. Like, hey, I'm having a bad day, but my kids would like to show up.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing. Community. Yeah.
Yes. And a lot of us don't have that in our own families, so it's fairly new.
Yeah.
It's a fairly new thing.
Yeah. And I will admit, it's difficult for me to do that because I'm so used to not having support, or not having genuine support. So I'm afraid to say, hey, I need help. Even though that is a very real thing, me needing that support. I'm afraid to ask for it because my experience with my own family is them not showing up, or it being, them making it feel like it's a burden. And so I don't reach out, or I don't say, hey, I need help. And she's told me several times, like, hey, if you need somebody to come, if you need help, I'm like, okay. And I just don't do it, even though I'm suffering.
We're not just checked off a box that we offered.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I hear Ray
other
saying,
people's children.
I actually hear Ray saying that she has had a very similar experience as you have, Angel. And I know it's very different. And also the threads, just like I spoke to the beginning, we all have very different ways of seeing the world, but we all want very similar things. And a lot of us have had trust issues when we're young. And so we were just like, forget it, I'll just do it myself. And I know that I'll show up for me, even though I'm exhausted. And when people are saying, yes, because this is me too, by the way, as, this is definitely a story from my life. I will do everything for everybody else, but will I allow them to do something for me and receive it graciously?
Yeah. And it's a hard no. I don't want to feel, when I need the help, I don't want to feel like what's the word? I don't want to feel like it's being a tally against me.
Are you kind of
I understand
where you said yesterday, like transactional?
Yeah. I don't want that. And that's a personal thing, I recognize that I'm projecting that on people. I haven't even given them a chance, or I haven't even felt out the situation to see if it's going to be like that. Because the truth is that I can fill it out, and if it is that way, then I'm like, okay, I won't deal with them again.
Yes.
but
Yes.
I'm putting
Yes.
myself in a box if I just by not by hanging on to like many experiences. And I like, okay, every interaction won't be that way because I'm not that way. I don't do people like that, but I just have it. I just expect to be done that way, and that's for my kids to be doing that.
Yeah.
You know?
And then when we heal that part of us, that part that says every relationship is transactional. If they're mostly on the side of honoring, then I'll stay with them. But if they're not, then I'm out. When we heal whatever that is, which I very deeply know, um, then we begin to recognize that everyone fails, actually. Everyone will fail us, and we will fail everyone else at times too. And then we'll more openly allow for the discomfort of imperfection there, and then become more willing to receive and more willing to offer to others and allow them to be part of our world, even when they're failing. Now, I don't mean big, I just
Yeah,
mean normal-ish stuff,
yeah.
whatever that is. Yeah. And then we can like receive, because I'm like, so you're taking kids, what day is this? What time is this? And how far will you drive? Probably too far.
Yeah.
Also, my kids mostly drive, so that's also not necessary. Yeah, I have a big discussion about gaps, a discussion on gaps that you can also, I mean, I actually have a podcast episode on the entire thing because it's such a common discussion. But I have an entire podcast series for newer homeschool moms on all the things that are very common discussions at that stage, like your home not actually being a school. And I personally don't like the word homeschool, but it is the word that everybody knows, so I use it. But school doesn't have the same qualities that home has. And there's so many different things we could explore in this discussion, which I've also got in the retreat. But what I would really want to reinforce is this idea of home is actually a place of relationship, and school is a to-do list. So don't bring to-do list to the home and say, done. Now I've got the to-do list. We followed through with the to-do list. Therefore, we accomplished it. Actually, the home is a learning environment, but it's filled with connection. And just like you've both declared, really, your connection with your kids sets the precedent to the atmosphere of their learning. Now, I'm going to ask you where you would like to go in a discussion on education and how to, where we should go. Because I'll tell you that there's a few things, what, maybe before I ask you what you'd like to engage, I know that I was going to address a conversation point with Mary about homeschooling more than one kiddo.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask you, is there a certain realm of this homeschool concept that you want to discuss? But so I came up with 9 different concepts about how to homeschool more than one kiddo. So the first thing is, obviously, you've already heard me declare that I don't think the goal is the checklist under any scenario, whether you have 1 or 15 kids. But the goal isn't the checklist for the education. So if that's not the goal, but you still want to include learning opportunities, or you want to introduce your kids to various curriculum resources, activities of any sort, you have full freedom to do whatever you want to do, but make sure that the environment is your focus. So how you connect, harmony, connection, all of that is the most important thing. And with more than one kiddo, this is more challenging to do, but routinely offering each of your kids eyeball to eyeball time with you, which means to me separate time. And I would never suggest that on Wednesday at 2 p.m. you should take each child out for a date. Sometimes life just does not allow that. But just knowing that there's sort of a common routine where you're connecting with your kids to give them true eyeball to eyeball time where they feel like they have your attention. So they can explain their Lego build, or they can share with you their bad dream last night, or their whatever. Make sure they genuinely feel like you're connected with them regularly, not scheduled, but regularly. And then, as you know, discussion on homeschool goes, the specific, if you're including specific activities or subjects, you don't have to do all those different subjects with each child. In fact, that is a recipe for crazy making if you try. Ask me how I know. But you don't want to choose different, you know, history curriculums for each child, or really almost anything. Maybe your goal is math and they really are at different levels, and you really do want to maintain a math curriculum for each of the kids. Then maybe you want to do that. And a way to approach math might be to show them how to do something, show them until they say, hey mom, can I do one? And then they engage and they try to do one, and then they try to do another one on another day. And then for a week, they do those things on their own. And when they learn those things, then they move to the next activity. And that's a way to encourage independence, but always come back to the math workbook and just check, are they actually really doing the thing? Because in my experience, not necessarily. They might be sitting with it and doodling, but they might not be doing what it is that they need to do independently. But mostly, I don't think you have to do different subjects with different kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also, I would say independence is very valuable to me, but don't expect independence if they really haven't been taught how to engage something. And check in with them every once in a while, even when they're super independent. Sometimes they need us to go in and just say, hey, what do you need? Or can I take a look at this with you? Or would you like me to read your story or something? Just so that they're still connected to you. No, actually, as I'm saying this, does that apply to your oldest in some way? Because she sounds very independent. Yeah.
Yeah. Where I feel like I need to show up for her, and I know she needs that connection in some way.
Yeah.
We gotta find it. You know, I know she very much enjoys just going on a private drive with me, or going on an errand with me. You know, because we can't always afford to go to the movies or something. But she enjoys that time with me, and she loves surprising me with facts. And, you know, not normal facts. That's why I say surprising. She likes to see what would shock or disturb me.
Nice. Thank you, honey.
And it's usually about nature.
Okay.
But I do enjoy that. And she knows that I enjoy learning from her. So she'll often find knowledge. She'll often find knowledge on, you know, a documentary or YouTube, so that she can also, you know, find something that I can learn, surprise me with something that I don't know.
Love that. That's great. I know the greatest educational recipient is you in this homeschool. Yeah. And then the next one I find is usually the youngest kiddo, because that one is learning things by osmosis. And you're like, how did you learn that? Who knows? Really, who knows? Yeah. But they learn a ton. And so actually, when in the beginning I homeschooled, my youngest was, I don't know how old he was. He was really little. And it was when we were homeschooling, and people were like, he's going to miss out. He's not going to have an education. I think he had the best one. So we're good. Also, sometimes.
No, thank you.
What's that?
I said, no, thank you to my son, because he had pushed a chair up to the balcony.
Oh, okay. All right. When we do have those little ones, we can give them a special basket that we just pull out at a certain time of day and say, this is just for the time when I'm going to be sitting with, you know, if we decide to sit alongside one of our kids and say, let's sit down and write this or read this or do whatever, then pull that basket out just for that time. Or have an app or a TV show. People still
need to do that with the basket.
Yeah, it's useful. Also, again, that concept of restricted screen time for the purpose of bringing it out when you really need it. But just, you know, also older kids are really useful to engage learning concepts with younger kiddos. And so being at ease with the idea that maybe one of our kids can
You
actually teach our younger child a math concept,
too.
it reinforces the older child's learning and
You
also
on the
allows
phone.
you to focus with another child at the same time.
Mhm.
I would say when it comes to homeschooling more than one kid, as all of homeschool discussions, less is more. It actually
Yeah.
is always.
Yeah.
So I think there's value in really learning about learning and not just learning about our children, but actually learning how do kids learn? What is developmental stages? I mean, you're an expert at this, Ray, right? This is what you do.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah,
really
well, that's why I went to school, was to be the best mom I could be. It wasn't necessarily a career goal. It was, I need to be better for my children. And so I went and got another degree.
wow. Wow, I just read parenting books. Good for you. And but all of these things, like when we're doing that, learning about learning and learning about child development, it helps to just put realistic expectations back into our homes, even if it's just ever so small. Then we can say, okay, wait, he's 5. Is he really supposed to be reading an encyclopedia that probably doesn't exist anymore? I'm clearly dating myself. But is he really supposed to be able to be patient when I say no to him? Or is he really supposed to not fight with his sibling? Or, and also this is applicable to 14-year-olds. But so it's useful for us to learn about learning. And if you can find just 15 minutes a week, a day, I don't know what would be realistic. I know that you both are very occupied with lots going on around you, but to reinforce some of the learning concepts about learning. You're also welcome to join that, and for whoever's listening, to join the Homeschool Mama Book Club, because I actually do the reading and then I bring the concepts to the book club. Other ways that I think other ways I think you can build confidence is through deschooling, which I do a lot of detail on. And deschooling is really just going into a deep dive of exploring what are the unhelpful mindsets that you've brought from your educational or your schooled education and brought it into your home. Because we tend to bring these ideas of, well, if I know my child is learning because they passed the test and got 80%. And so we tell ourselves that means learning. And, for reasons I don't understand, we have constantly got just questions about socialization, which confounds me to this day, because our kids are always with other kids or always have opportunities to do so many activities. But we also have we allow our children to do so many learning opportunities and follow rabbit trails, and we're discussing economics, world economics and politics when they're 5, or at ages where you're not even doing that in a school. In a school, you're lucky if you're in grade 12 and you have a class on something like that. And yet we get asked all the time about gaps in our kids' education. And I just want to always stop the conversation and explore with the person with me. So you're telling me you don't have any gaps. And so the same amount of stuff that Google's got right now, which is still not the fullness of human knowledge or God knowledge. It's not all of it. And so if you expect no gaps in my homeschool, then why is it that a C average is a passing grade in a high school, and you made it through with a C average? And I'm fine with that, because by the way, that was me, a C average in high school, and that was good enough. And that didn't produce gaps, but my homeschool will.
Yeah, I came across a dialogue that really was interesting to me in regards to, like the whole socialization thing that people like to say, because I've experienced many, many times where out in public, oh my goodness, your kids are so well behaved. They are so eloquent, blah, 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 blah. And then when they find out my kids are homeschooled,
Yeah.
and it's just like, well, how do they get socialized? I'm like, well, you just complimented them on
Yes,
their
exactly.
ability to socialize with a full adult.
Yeah.
And you have questions about socialization. And one of the things I said was, I remember distinctly in school, because my oldest was also in school as well, there was absolutely no socialization allowed in class.
No,
There's
Yeah.
barely any socialization allowed in lunch.
they
Yeah.
say we're not here to socialize.
Yes, that's the overarching theme. And then when the kids are on the playground, that's not socializing, it's bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, like there's like a whole lot of things going on because kids are stressed
Yeah.
out from school. So that's all going to come out on the playground.
Yeah.
Stressed out from the teachers. My son experienced being, he's experienced racism
Mm,
in third grade.
I'm sorry.
So and his teacher she was sitting right there.
Mhm.
But because she didn't want to be bothered, he was coming to her for help.
Mm,
I'm like, our children are suffering in these
mm,
classrooms
yeah.
because the teacher, she is spread thin between all of
Yeah.
these kids. She cannot be present. And I'm like, do you realize what's happening? But I realized when we're disconnected because we are stressed out. Of course, you're at work, your kid is at work as
Yeah.
well. All
Mhm.
y'all get off work. You have this small window of conversation. A lot of times you're so tired and bogged down from work. You're not going to be having conversations with your kids. You're going to be pushing them. Oh, okay, having dinner. All right, time for bed. There's very little communication happening.
Yeah.
And we would sit down to eat dinner, and we would talk to them. Okay, how was your day?
Mhm.
That was the only way we would find out how his day was as teen. And that was the only way we found out that two kids his age were being racist towards him, telling him because of his skin color,
Sorry.
somebody
Yeah.
else wasn't his friend,
Yeah.
hurting him. These are things that I would never imagine happening to my kid. I didn't experience any of that until I was well into high school,
You didn't.
So I'm just like,
Mm.
it's starting earlier, and
Yeah. Well, the
it's
last few
because,
years, I mean,
yeah.
I don't experience what everybody's experiencing. I
Mhm.
live in a very crunchy town, as I said, so we're unusual, but I hear it's a lot worse.
Yeah, it
You know?
is. But it's the kids are the fruit of the parents.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about it is that there's a lot of like it's just a lot of things, and it's like a lot of people are not being real with themselves
Mhm.
and are being too busy because of social media. You get this notion that you can be judgmental and you can say what you want to
Yes.
say to people because
Yes.
you have a
Mhm.
platform to form your own opinion, but that doesn't work in other people's lives. Like if I'm face to face with you, if you
Yes.
say the stuff that you say on your personal page, we're gonna have a problem.
Yeah.
But the problem is that people are it's easy to hide all of that, but your
Mhm.
kids, you can't control what your kid is gonna say. Our kids say anything. It's like, bro, what? Why did you say that? But they're gonna tell the truth of who you are and how you are.
They're gonna reveal everything.
Yes, because they're modeling you in your real behavior, your true behavior. And
Sometimes just in like I absolutely agree with you in certain like
mhm,
mindsets. And also I have a kiddo that is like, whoa, what did you say? And that isn't me.
yeah,
Like there is,
yeah,
but when it comes to those kinds of things, yeah, that does make you go, what the heck? Although I
yeah.
can remember like the same kiddo that I just spoke about, my stomach dropped, like, or my heart dropped into my stomach when we went into the mall. She's 3 years old, okay, and very observant, but always spoke her mind. And she immediately saw this woman who was large, and she's like, "Mom, why is she so fat?" And I was like, "Oh my goodness, kiddo, seriously." This literally the same afternoon,
Yeah.
somebody was smoking. She made a big comment. She saw somebody that was black, a black girl. Why is she so black? And I was like, oh my gosh, please.
Yeah,
And then there was another man being fed by a woman who was in a wheelchair and asked me about that. So I actually deeply know what it's like to have a kid that just goes blah. Also,
yeah,
other kids
yeah,
that would not ever do that.
yeah.
And,
Because
and
my
yeah,
oldest
that
is
was my
like that. He's
experience.
very like he had the questions and stuff. And like I grew up in the kids should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
me
I was
too.
trying to suppress, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. And that's not
Yeah,
him. He's gonna
I'm not
express
my
those
kid either.
things, but But the reality is that I'm like, my kid was being exposed to so many things that he shouldn't have been exposed
Yeah,
to, so
100%.
young. And I'm like, I honestly, I started to say, uh, well, we are homeschooled, and you just compliment them on how their socialization. Like maybe you don't understand the definition of it, but you're just regurgitating
Yeah,
the things that,
what
because
you
it's
just
all the
said
same.
didn't make sense.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they
I
all have
just
the
want to
same
honor,
thing.
I want to
Yeah,
honor and acknowledge though that it's painful for me to hear, and I can only imagine how you feel when your child is treated like, why am I bad because I don't have your color? I would
yeah,
think that would be truly painful. So, and I don't know how to really speak to that. And yet
yeah.
to say, I'm really sorry, because that would be super painful.
Thank you. And it really didn't. I knew where we lived, but I didn't understand where we lived because we lived on the Mason-Dixon line. We lived around the corner from Gettysburg. We lived in Maryland, but you learn history and stuff in school. You learn enough to pass the test. You don't actually understand what you are learning. So it
Yeah.
took me living there. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what we talked about in history. This is exactly
Yeah.
where this war happened. And I didn't realize like we had a lot of people who still held on to that notion of, you know, pro-slavery and all the things. So yeah, we were gonna
Yeah.
have people who were, good-hearted people, and also the people who still wanted to hold on to that hate that
Hmm.
he was going to school with. And it didn't dawn on me until that happened to him. But I was just so shocked that how young he was.
Yeah.
But it didn't make me want to homeschool or nothing like that because I didn't have that. I had the desire to homeschool him when we first got there, but I had a person that I trusted who was a mentor to me tell me that I was unequipped to homeschool him.
Right.
And I was like, when I understood and we started homeschooling, I was like, that was my biggest regret. I was young still, but I wish that I still did it because my relationship with him would have remained intact instead of
Hmm.
being here now.
Right.
Because maybe you might have something to help me with this, but that whole experience with me being told my kid was acting one way at school when I knew he acted a completely different way at home, it caused a certain level of detachment, emotional detachment from me, like from him.
Right.
And I've been trying to work to get that back because I it was traumatizing for me and him.
So
And
I'm
it did,
curious, like I would go, I can hear this is a very
yeah,
big thing. And I
yeah.
would go again to the same general discussion we had last night about what was going on inside of you when you were hearing that your son is dot, dot, dot. And what was it that you were telling yourself when you were hearing that he was whatever that was? Because that isn't adult mom angel speaking. That's, I'm guessing, I should say, I'm guessing that maybe it's the young angel that is like, I need to protect myself from the kind of person that someone told me that my child is. Am I totally in the wrong field? Because I could be totally wrong.
Yeah, I guess when I look back to the way my mom was with me, I I think it was more of the the feelings of the negative feelings I had from my mom, the way because I had to hide a lot of the abuse and stuff. I would go to school with black guys and stuff, and I had to like
Sorry.
protect her
Yeah.
um and not tell the truth.
Mhm.
And I honestly, I don't know what part of me was triggered when we were experiencing what we were experiencing with him and school and stuff because it was just like I didn't understand, it didn't make sense because it got to the point where he started to like hide the
Yeah.
behavior charts and stuff and started to lie and things like that. And I remember growing up, I lied because I was afraid of
Yeah.
telling the truth
Mhm.
and because it wasn't a safe space.
Yes.
And maybe the things that I was feeling, maybe that, of the why that I was lying, maybe those feelings of like, maybe I couldn't accept that he was starting to lie. Um,
Because it said
I don't know.
something to you.
Yeah, because I guess I didn't really reconcile the fact that the reason he lied was for the same reason that I was lying.
Well, it might not be,
Yeah,
FYI. It might not be.
yeah,
So
yeah,
for sure, we naturally assume that whatever our experience was is what our child's behavior must reveal to us. I've been there many
yeah,
times too, and then discovered, nope, not that either.
yeah,
Having said that, this discussion right here, even
mhm,
the way that I can see that there's more, you've got more movement, and there's like,
yeah,
this is like big,
yeah,
and it's something very, like, very big.
yeah.
This is a probably 6 weeks of conversation, like actually legit. I'm not actually exaggerating, because sometimes people will say, well, I'd like to have a coaching session. And then I hear, okay, and then I would like to figure out my life at the end of this hour. And I'm like, it didn't work that way for me. And I'm still doing
Yeah,
it, actually. I'm still on the journey. But I would genuinely offer you, let's chat about that then in your
okay,
session, or whatever you feel at that time really feels like this is what you need to speak to. Because I can hear that that's really big.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was honestly, it was one of the, outside of my upbringing, it was one of the most traumatic experiences of my life because he having him save my life and the connection that I had with him, I don't have that anymore. And it's not from him because he still wants to connect with me. But I have like, it's like there's like now a wall that I have up towards him
Yeah.
because of that experience. And I don't know how to let, like, I don't know
Yes.
how to get it back, you know?
Okay,
And
so you know what?
yeah,
Whether you do that with me or you do that with somebody else, I'll just be the one person that says you are saying it out loud, that you know how big this is, because he still wants to connect with you, and yet you're like, I don't know if I can, or if I put something up here, it's too important. What you just said is the most important thing out of every bit of the homeschool. None of it matters except for that.
yeah, mhm,
That's the most important part. Literally, it wouldn't matter if he learned to read that right there, but he will. And he probably already has, right? But what you're saying right now is the most important thing. And you don't want to jump over that. You want to go
yeah,
deep into it.
absolutely,
And not only
yeah,
for him, for you. And then not only are you helping him at his child's age, he's 12, you said, or
yeah,
11 or
yeah.
12.
He's
And
11.
then
He'll be 12 this
11.
year.
Yeah, and he's like at that age where he starts to individuate and then become
Hmm.
more his own person. And then things look even more complicated as he pulls away for normal reasons.
Yeah,
But then you're also healing that part of you, that younger girl, also at the same time. Yeah, and it can be done. I like really can be done. And it's not easy. And it's not in one session, in my
yeah,
experience, but
yeah,
it's a lifetime, actually. So, I wasn't expecting to say this, that this would somehow tie into this, but my reality is that my own stories are, in the last few years, I feel like the ability to really be present and real with you and recognize that my story that I had as a child, I wouldn't put on anybody. And just like I
mhm,
wouldn't put on yours and I wouldn't put on yours. And yet it can legitimately become something really beautiful and meaningful. And it's that story is calling you to rise up and become who you were meant to be. That story is equipping you to be who you were meant to be. And even though I would never put those things on you, and I'm not saying that story was great, I'm just saying that it has the capacity of actually creating a framework for the biggest, bestest life that you can live. Like it can raise you up to something you might not have had if you didn't have that story. And I believe that for our kids too, because they are placed in our world, in our specific world, in the story that was our story and is going to be part of their story because it's affecting them too. And it's all going to be a good thing, not a bad thing, if we choose to grow and go through the crap of it sometimes, the muck of it, and say, okay, let's just go in. Let's just sit in the compost again. Okay, what do I need to learn here? Because one day the compost actually helps to make the seeds of the next generation or whatever flourish in a way that couldn't have happened without that crap. Yeah. Is there anything that's coming up for you or that you want to speak about before we close? I'd be very curious if you've had any thoughts or insights from our time together.
For me, in my mind, I'm just going back to, the negative internal thoughts. Like, even when others, question us, to, like we mentioned yesterday as well, purposely speak to ourselves. You are more than enough, for your children and to educate your children and to show up for your children, where we are right now.
Yeah. In the big story, the one that was
Yeah.
both given to you and to them. That's a life work right there. It really is. Yeah. And when
I had
we
never
see
thought.
it, say again.
I had never thought to unpack my own educational story. And so I guess that's what I gotta do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long-term thing, but every time, I don't know what it is about. Like, I would love to know what it is about self-awareness when we become clearer about ourselves and our stories and all the thoughts that we have. They dissipate somehow. And they really do, even though it might take years. And I'm not saying, oh, I see the thought, therefore now I'm done with that storyline. No, you'll probably be seeing it for a while now. And you'll always get deeper layers of understanding as to why it mattered in the first place. Or like I spoke to you, Ray, yesterday, that we agree at some point to our mother allowing her to treat us like that. Now humor me on this, okay? Because I haven't told you all my stories, but I also hid a lot of stories, and we knew the police well, and we were in shelters and all the stuff. And they've separated numerous times, divorced twice, all of the stuff. So I know some version of that story too. And yet we signed up, we agreed, oh, I will play the caretaker. That's my role. I will play the help people, even if their mental health issues are wildly out of whack. I agree to not allowing myself to be fully me, because that would be scary. And that would require trust in someone else to see me. Or you agree to all sorts of things. And when we start to look at the real us and all the things we agreed to and all of the storylines that we believed, I don't know why, but it starts to dissipate. And so that's why that self-awareness journey, whether that's having conversations with me or someone else, or writing, journaling stuff, or I don't know, whatever self-awareness stuff that really does make you feel seen, makes you look back to, when did I first agree to this thing? How can I look at my 8-year-old self as a full-grown 49-year-old woman and then say, you know what? I see you. I'm with you in that moment of trauma. I'm sorry that's happening to you. You must be so afraid and so confused. And you must be like feeling like, what can I do? I must be able to control this. No, it's just them. It's their stuff. It's, you can't do anything. I care about you. You're going to be okay. I'm coming alongside you. You're going to be okay. Whatever we do to serve that person inside of us that hasn't quite become 49 yet, or 33. And I don't remember, but definitely not 49.
55.
Babies. Oh my gosh. I can't believe I'm saying 30 as a baby.
Well, thank
but
you for calling us babies.
yes. Oh, you too will become 49 and then realize it is though, actually. Anyway, and apparently I am too, to an 80-year-old somewhere. So, but anyways, when we do that self-awareness stuff, it actually dissipates stuff. It's a really not pleasant work. I will say that it's not pleasant. And sometimes, like I said before, it causes earthquakes in relationships around us and can shift stuff. But it can also be profoundly useful because no matter what compost or crap you've been given in life, it can make the rest of your life flourish in ways you would never have imagined. And I believe that because I have lived that. So go figure, at the end of this conversation about home education, we're talking about compost and nothing related to homeschool at all.
Yeah.
I'm I have to say I'm very surprised at how all of the challenges that I was dealing with regarding homeschool. I'm like, bro, I didn't know it all dealt with, like, it was all like the root was me
Yeah.
and my husband and our stuff. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So welcome to the homeschool journey. It's not about academics. You already knew it wasn't about the socialization thing. It's
Yeah.
all about us.
Yeah. But that's honestly, I'm more relieved than anything because now I can, like, okay, I mean, that stuff is because they already know a lot. They're already learning. So that
I
takes the
know.
pressure
Yeah.
off of me
Yeah.
because I was just like, God, this is so much.
Yeah. Yeah. And welcome to the homeschool journey. I'm not the only one that will say this. Really, you'll hear it everywhere. If you're on social media, on anybody's homeschool site that's, homeschooled for longer than 5 years-ish and beyond. I'm throwing that out there as a general guideline, but then you'll hear these kinds of thoughts. And I know that it's easier for me because I've been there, done that. And it wasn't easy for me when I was at your space. It wasn't. I was like, I hope it's okay. I hope it's okay. And then, yeah, no, they're good. Yeah. And now I'm like, who needs a high school diploma? You're fine. Go live your life. And some of my kids have, and some of my kids haven't, but it has zero impact on their capacity to get into post-secondary school or live a meaningful life. And then I learned just what you're learning. The majority of my homeschool intentions has nothing to do with the academics, nothing to do with socialization. Well, not directly, not social opportunities, and it is exactly this work right here is the biggest thing that you're really enabling your children to have is to, how do I deal with this in here? How do I deal with my challenges? I watched mom come out of this really hard place. Now I have skills or tools to deal with my really hard stuff for the rest of my life. They live their lives on purpose. So can I. That's the stuff that matters. That's what we're raising up kids to do. Yeah. So exciting being with you. And I know that I'm beyond my time. And I know my husband is like, we need to go. And he is right. But I love this. It was such a delight chatting with you. And tonight we're going to talk about our big emotions. So let's bring it. It's going to be the growth work, the funnest part. Do you like my grammar? Yeah.
We'll sleep well tonight after we do our big emotion.
Yeah, because I
Yes,
finally went to bed
Urge.
at an earlier time, and I was tired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being vulnerable, like you said, drains your battery.
Yeah.
It does. It does. But
That is
Sleep
yeah,
well.
it's powerful in a connecting thing too, by the way. It really brings you into other people and then you're like, oh wow, I didn't realize that they thought that, and then you can genuinely connect from your true self. It's a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing this time with me. And we'll see you at 6. I hope it's a really good day.
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
See you
Bye.
soon. Bye.
Bye.